Hi everyone, this is Brian Amrine with Value Driven Analytics coming to you with some communication tips. Now if you follow these, it can have a dramatic impact on the trajectory of your career versus if you present like the typical analyst does, getting technical and in the weeds versus staying high level. So today, my top 2 recommendations for you when you're presenting an analysis to a stakeholder or an executive is to 1, stay brief, and 2, focus on the recommended actions. Those 2 things are so important when you're presenting your work. When it comes to being brief, one reason this is so important is that when you're brief, when you can say something in a sentence or 2 versus in a whole paragraph or 2, people are going to understand it much better when you're brief. You might think, well, the more I talk about it, the more they're going to understand it. No, the reality is the more you talk about it, the more likely you are to lose that person. But if you can explain something, especially with the use of visuals, if you have a PowerPoint and maybe you have some PowerPoint shapes that explain in a flow how you went about doing something, that can be a really powerful way to explain a concept. A lot of people are visual learners compared to just talking about something for 5 or 10 minutes. So be brief in everything you communicate. But another way of being brief is to start with an executive summary. You know, especially with executives, you may have a half hour, an hour meeting booked, but the reality is that a stakeholder or an executive might be running late to a meeting, they might have to leave that meeting earlier, and you may only have 5 or 10 minutes to get what you need to accomplish accomplished. And what you need to accomplish is to communicate the recommended actions of the analysis. If you don't do that in a meeting, the meeting is a failure because it didn't actually create any value. So make sure if you have 5 minutes, if you have 10 minutes, that you communicate those insights and, most importantly, the actions that result from the insights. So be brief. That's why it's important to start with an executive summary that you know you're going to at least get through that. Now, when you write an executive summary, there's a lot of formats you could go with, but the format that a lot of people use for answering an interview question, the STAR format, is a great one to start with. So the STAR format is an acronym that starts with situation. What was the context that drove the need for this analysis? T for task. What task? What was your job in this analysis? What was the purpose of it? What was the point of it? And then action. Action is how you went about doing that analysis. Now, you gotta be careful there. We as analysts we spent most of our time creating that analysis methodology. Hopefully it's rigorous and robust, and we want to tell the world about it. But the reality is that if you focus on that, you may never even get to the insights or the recommended actions, the most important part of the analysis. And that if you get too technical in that explanation of the analysis, which is a temptation a lot of analysts have, you will lose your stakeholders, and they won't even, by the time you get to the actions, if you do get to it, you'll have lost them at that point. They're focused on something else. They're checking their emails, looking forward to the next meeting. But man, if you can explain that action that you took, the analysis methodology at a high level, wow. If you do that really well, a stakeholder who usually maybe doesn't even look forward to the analysis meetings because they typically get lost, they might actually walk away from that meeting thinking, you know, I never understood regression, but after hearing that analyst explain regression at such a high level, I don't fully grasp it, but I think I kind of understand the high level overview of how it works. That's really neat. I never thought I'd get there before. So if you can get the stakeholders there, that's a great place to be. If you're not at that point in your communication, that's okay. Just don't spend a lot of time on that action action piece of how you perform the analysis. Now, the last part that you want to spend a little more time on is the results. What insights did you find in the analysis? We found that these types of customers are more likely to buy. We found that our sales are expected to increase relative to our goal over the next 12 months. Interesting insights. Those are things you definitely want to talk about. And then most importantly, we want to talk about the actions that we would recommend based on the insights we found. You know, we could take that STAR format and we could actually add an A when it comes to analytics presentations. The first action is the action you took, how you performed the analysis, but the last A and the most important part of the whole acronym is what actions do we recommend? So that's a good format for an executive summary. Now, that is a part that hopefully you're able to get through that in at least five minutes or so that if an executive only has 5 minutes to spend on the analysis, they get that and they at least they know the actions that you'd recommend taking. Here's the thing, a lot of analysts think that if they can explain their methodology well enough that they'll convince the executive that this is robust and they should move forward with the insights. But here's the thing about executives, a lot of them trust analysts. The analyst brings the data, other people bring opinions, but the analyst brings the data. And unless you do something to violate that trust by maybe having a lack of attention to detail, you're not validating your work, and maybe in the past you've presented some numbers that are actually inaccurate or an analysis that wasn't robust, unless you do something to violate that trust, you probably have the trust of your stakeholder. You don't need to convince them by going into your methodology that your analysis is robust. Most likely they trust you. So again, focus on the results, focus on the insights, focus on the actions. Now, it's good practice, whether you're an analyst or anyone presenting to anyone, to think about and anticipate what questions you might get. Very good practice to do that. Keeps you prepared for anything that could come up. But here's the thing, a lot of people are tempted to, after preparing for that, just going ahead and addressing every possible question they think they could get. After all, we prepared a lot of time. We took a lot of time to prepare for those questions. So why not share that information proactively? Oh, that's the type of thing that's going to lead to a presentation that never actually gets to the recommended actions and the insights if you spent all your time talking about these anticipated questions. So yes, anticipate those, but let your stakeholders bring up those questions and be ready to address them. Another important concept that goes along with that is when you're going through your presentation, again, you may not have the 30 minutes or the hour that you anticipated. You may get questions along the way. And rather than being the type of presenter that says, oh yeah, we'll get to that eventually, just wait, 10, 30 minutes later, we'll get to that, I've got that in the presentation. It's much better. I think executives appreciate a person who can say, yeah, sure, let's go ahead and talk about that. And so you're ready and you're able and you're willing to just go ahead and skip to maybe a presentation that has a nice visual that talks through that. Be flexible. Again, you never know how much time you're actually gonna have with a stakeholder or executive. But hopefully those are some good tips for you. If you follow these tips of being brief and focusing on the actions, most likely you'll have more opportunities to present your work to executives in the future. That's great visibility, that's great career development. I wish more organizations, and some do a great job with this, but some don't. I wish more organizations would allow analysts and others to present their own work. It's a great honor to do that, and it makes sense from a business perspective. Nobody knows your work like you do. And if there are questions in a presentation, if the person who actually did the work is there, they're best able to address those follow-up questions and explain the details that someone's asking about. So I wish more organizations would do that, but the reality is that a lot of organizations are hesitant to have an analyst present because they get into the weeds so much. So in maybe the few opportunities you have to present your work to a stakeholder, an executive, if you really do a good job of being brief and focusing on the insights, those executives, your manager, they're gonna see that as an opportunity to give you more opportunities to present your work. Again, that's gonna be great for your career development, maybe even have implications from a leadership perspective. They're gonna start seeing you more as a leader because a big part of being a leader is being a good communicator. So be brief and focus on the recommended actions. And Pretty soon, you'll hopefully be able to present your work even more than you are today. I want to thank you for watching today. I hope you got a lot out of it. And if you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future. Now, if you have any questions about what we covered, please consider leaving a comment and I'll try to respond to it as soon as I can. One last thing, if you or your organization ever need anything analytics related, an analysis, a dashboard build, maybe a data science model build, perhaps deeper training on this very topic or other analytics topics, even a complete analytics transformation, please consider value-driven analytics. Check out our site at valuedrivenanalytics.com, and if it resonates with you, give us a call. We'd love to help you out.